You ever have one of those moments where the universe just lines up all your problems and sets them on fire for the neighbors to see? Yeah, that was me, staring out at my backyard as sirens ricocheted off the stucco and 30 half-dressed party crashers clawed their way out of my swimming pool like it was some apocalyptic game show gone wrong. The red haze in the water wasn't blood, thank God, just the aftermath of my little chili extract experiment revenge recipe I'd brewed up with more spite than science, but sure worked. The shrieking, the coughing, the panicked scrambly if you'd told me a week before that my peaceful Saturdays would end up like this, I'd have called you crazy. But here we were, Karen's circus in my backyard, deputies trying to keep straight faces, and me, somewhere between furious and proud, not sure if I'd want her to start a neighborhood war. The whole mess started a few mornings earlier. I'd bought this house specifically for the pool, the kind of private oasis you imagine escaping to after a tough week. The last thing I needed was Karen, our HOA's self-appointed queen, treating my place like a public park. She'd always been a background, nuisance-snagging emails, cryptic newsletters, maybe a sideways glance at the lawn. But nothing could have prepared me for opening my blinds that morning and finding 30 strangers in my backyard, balloons tied to my diving board, and Karen sunglasses, attitude, feet up on my lounge, chair presiding over it all like she'd finally conquered Rome. My first instinct was to storm out, coffee mug in hand, and throw everyone out by the ear. But Karen, ever the performer, played her part, told me the HOA had voted my pool into a community amenity due to underuse. Underuse. I laughed, because what else do you do when someone says something that insane? She didn't blink. The guests stared. One guy actually offered me a drink from my own cooler like I was the intruder. That's the moment it really hit. Mirging with her was a losing game. She was the kind of person who'd scratch you, then claim you'd attacked her. So I told her, calm as I could, that she had until sundown to clear out or I'd call the cops. Of course, she shrugged and said she had a city permit. Total lie, but I had no proof. That night, I lay awake plotting. Calling the police? Too easy. Thrive on the drama. Signs on the fence? She did cheating down. What I needed was something that'd make her think twice. And that's when inspiration struck. My pool filtration system, state of the art, had this handy chemical feed line. A little online shopping, a trip to the spice wholesaler, and suddenly I had industrial-strength chili extract, nothing dangerous, just a surefire way to make a swim feel like sitting in a vat of hot sauce. Next afternoon, Karen's crowd doubled, emboldened by my so-called defeat. They jeered at me from my own deck, clinking drinks and blasting music. She actually dropped a flyer in my mailbox for a community summer kickoff at Get the Izumi address. I laughed, but inside, I was shaking with anticipation. When the day arrived, the sun was high, the water clear, and the neighborhood buzzing. I poured the chili extract in a feed line, wiped everything down, and waited. I won't leave me hand shook. This wasn't exactly neighborly. But as the first shouts rang out, people leaping from the pool, clutching at their eyes, skin blotched and burning, I felt a thrill of justice. Or maybe just relief. Karen screamed about lawsuits. Deputies tried not to laugh as they watched sunburned partygoers stagger out of my yard. And somewhere, a local news crew started filming. My phone buzzed with memes before I'd even toweled off. But I knew, even as the yard cleared out and the sirens faded, this wasn't over. If anything, I'd just given her new ammunition. Sure enough, by morning, Karen had recast herself as the victim, posting on the HOA forum, calling my pool a chemical weapon, spinning tales of persecution. Soon the HOA board was camped at the end of my driveway, holding their own little tribunal. Flyers with my photo, Pool Predator, showed up on poles and mailboxes. It was almost funny if it wasn't so effective. Even neighbors who'd waved at me for years started crossing the street. Karen ramped up her campaign, showing up with a contractor to measure my fence, hinting loudly about code violations and community rights. I documented everything, building a paper trail thicker than a phone book. And every time she upped the ante, letters from lawyers, more parties announced, even a grand reopening banner strung across the street. I stayed calm, filing paperwork, reinforcing the fence, and quietly assembling allies. Turns out, I wasn't the only one she'd steamrolled, Mrs. Parker and Tom, the electrician, came forward with stories of their own. Together, we started collecting evidence, emails, photos, complaints, all painting a picture of a woman addicted to power and performance. The showdown came sooner than I expected. Karen scheduled a massive community pool bash, complete with DJ, bounce house, and a welcome table. The scene outside looked like a festival. Inside, my house was a war room. Live feeds from cameras, allies gathered around the dining table, stacks of evidence ready for battle. As the party kicked off, I stepped onto the deck, calm, hands up, and told the crowd every one of them was trespassing, sheriff on standby, evidence being compiled for legal action. Karen tried to shout me down, but my allies, Mrs. Parker, Tom, came forward, holding up emails and screen grabs, giving voice to everyone she'd bullied. The deputy took my deed, looked it over, then at Karen, and you could feel the tide turn. Reporters closed in, cameras rolled, guests realized they were witnesses to a public unmasking, not a pool party. Karen blustered, then faltered, then finally slunk away as her supporters scattered. The memification was instant. But the real shift came in the days after HOA launched an audit. Her GoFundMe disappeared. Allies of hers went silent or quietly apologized. She responded, of course, lawyer letters, code complaints, pamphlets accusing me of all manner of crimes. A drone buzzed my house. Teenagers, egged on by her, spray painted my mailbox. But I kept documenting, kept calm, trusting that the system would finally catch up. As weeks went by, the neighborhood changed. People waved again. The HOA held emergency elections. Karen was removed, banned from leadership. The crowd in the room erupting in applause. Even then, I stayed cautious, locking gates, checking cameras, but the energy was different. The community felt lighter. The sheriff's cars still swung by now and then, but the tent Karen had set up for her community truth center vanished overnight. One morning, the county investigator called formal charges coming against Karen for perjury, harassment, misuse of funds. I sat at my kitchen table, the early sun slanting across the floor, and realized it was over. Not with a bang, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd stood my ground. The pool was mine again, calm and blue. No more chili extract required. Neighbors dropped off thank you notes. The playground got repainted. Laughter returned. And as memes of the chili pool faded, replaced by new scandals, I realized the real legacy was in the small things a young couple writing to say I'd inspired them to fight their own HOA. Mrs. Parker planting new roses, Tom finally finishing his garage. Karen faded from view, her court dates a formality. I joined the neighborhood improvement committee, determined never to let power go unchecked again. Maybe that's the American way, stubborn defense of your own patch of land. The courage to say enough, even when it means becoming a symbol you never asked to be. Every night, I still check the locks, watch the pool lights shimmer, and remind myself that peace-like property is something you fight for, and then have to keep tending one small act at a time. And you watching this, if you've ever faced a bully in your own backyard or wondered where the line between standing up and going too far really lies, let me ask, was I wrong? Was Karen just misunderstood? Or is there a time when the only way to reclaim your peace is to fight, not with fists, but with evidence, patience, and maybe a little hot sauce? Drop your take in the comments. Let's hear your stories, your verdicts, your craziest neighborhood battles. Because in the end, justice isn't quiet, and neither is community.